We're on to The Glass Eye, which is a chapter in the book The Twits by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl owns all of this. His publishing company, whoever owns it now, owns all of this. I have nothing to do with it. I'm just doing this for educational purposes, which means the purpose of learning. Anyways, I said The Glass Eye. Now, this is a pretty awesome chapter. This is where things really start to pick up. We've met Mr. Twit, we've met Mrs. Twit, and now we're going to see the interactions between them. An interaction is when people talk to each other, or people do stuff together, or people do stuff to each other, which is a lot about what this book is about. It's how Mr. and Mrs. Twit treat each other. And then later on, we get to see how Mr. and Mrs. Twit treat other things. So, this is the first chapter where we have Mr. and Mrs. Twit interacting together, which I said means doing stuff and talking to each other. So, I'm going to be doing voices for them. Don't be startled. This is a book that comes from England. I will be doing my interpretation of a Cockney accent. Okay? Nobody panic. Okay, I also found out that whenever I do this, you guys can totally see it the right direction. It's not backwards. Okay, this is called The Glass Eye, and we see Mrs. Twit, and we see the thing I was trying to tell you about last time, how one eye is looking one way, and the other eye is looking the completely different way. Now, which eye in this picture is the glass eye? I don't know. I assume it's the really big one. I assume that's the glass eye. Now, we're going to preview the pictures just like we've been doing. So we look here and we see Mrs. Twit, definitely her, there's no beard. We see that her hair looks a lot like Mr. Twit's beard, is what I'm thinking. And that one of those eyes looks different from the other, and they are definitely looking different directions. Mrs. Twit also has in her hand a walking stick or a cane. So now we're going to preview the other pictures in this. Oh, there's another one. There's Mr. Twit. He's sitting next to a bunch of bottles. Now, in this chapter, it does talk, I believe, about Mr. Twit drinking beer. Beer is an alcoholic beverage that only adults should drink. And so, don't be put off by him drinking a beer in this chapter. Let's see if there's any of those. The only pictures in here. We see the Mr. Twit with his bottles of beer. And we see Mrs. Twit showing us her glass eye and her eyes looking two different directions. Okay, I'm going to read you the book. And as I read, I will explain to you certain words that I think maybe you need definitions of. But also in all of the... in all of my information below, you will find the vocabulary words of things that I've gone over. Okay. The glass eye. You can play a lot of tricks with a glass eye because you can take it out and pop it back in anytime you like. You can bet your life Mrs. Twit knew all the tricks. One morning, she took out her glass eye and dropped it into Mr. Twit's mug of beer, a glass of beer, when he wasn't looking. Mr. Twit sat there drinking the beer slowly. The froth made a white ring on the hairs around his mouth. Froth is like the bubbles on top of a soda or anything that is bubbly. Whenever you pour something, it all bubbles up at the top. That white stuff that's bubbly, that's froth. And so beer has froth. Okay, so the froth was making a white ring around his mustache, is what it just said. He wiped the white froth onto his sleeve and wiped his sleeve onto his trousers. Trousers is a fancy word for pants. Now, often trousers are referring to something other than blue jeans, like pants that are made out of a linen material or something that is not blue jean. And so he wiped it onto his trousers. Now, I'm not sure if that's what they mean, that he was wearing fancy pants, because it may just be back in the 1980s or in England where this book is actually taking place, that trousers is just the regular word they use for pants. So, now I begin the accents and going into character. "You're plotting something," Mrs. Twit said, keeping her head turned so he wouldn't see that she had taken out her glass eye, so she's turned like this. "Whenever you go all quiet like that, I know very well you're plotting something." Mrs. Twit was right. Mr. Twit was plotting away like mad. He was trying to think up a really nasty trick he could play on his wife that day. Now, we'll find out in these books that they play a lot of tricks on each other. That's what their relationship is like. But remember, they're twits. It means a silly, foolish person. "You better be careful," Mrs. Twit said, "because when I see you starting to plot, I watch you like a wombat." "Oh, do shut up, you old hag," Mr. Twit said. He went on drinking his beer, and his evil mind kept working away on the latest horrid trick he was going to play on the old woman. He was thinking about a really awful trick he could play on this old woman, which is his wife. Oh, wait, there was a picture we missed. Now look at this picture. As you came up in the book, you would see this picture, and you would see Mr. Twit gaping into this bottle, into this cup. And what is that in there? It looks like an eye, maybe, or an olive. Let's read and find out. Suddenly, as Mr. Twit tipped the last drop of beer down his throat, he caught sight of Mrs. Twit's awful glass eye staring up at him from the bottom of the mug. It made him jump. "Oh, I told you I was watching you," cackled Mrs. Twit. "I got eyes everywhere, so you better be careful." And that ends this chapter called The Glass Eye. And we saw the first trick that they tried to play on each other. So first, Mrs. Twit tricked Mr. Twit by putting her glass eye into his beer, and it made him go, "Ooh!" Okay, so that's the first interaction between them two. I'm pausing now, and I will see you guys in the next chapter, which is titled The Frog.